In the frozen outskirts of Manchuria, during the 1930s and 1940s, stood one of the most secretive and disturbing facilities in military history. Officially, it was just a research station. To the world, it was disguised as a simple lumber mill, but its real name still sends a chill down the spine of anyone who learns it. Unit 731. This was the heart of Imperial Japan's covert biological warfare program, a project born from the mind of Dr. Shiro Ishii. Ishii was a brilliant microbiologist with a dangerous ambition. He believed that biological weapons could give Japan unmatched power, and he convinced the military to give him a place where he could conduct his research without limits, without oversight, and without mercy. They gave him exactly that: secrecy, authority, and a remote location far from prying eyes. Inside this heavily guarded complex, thousands of prisoners were held. They were captured soldiers, civilians, political dissidents, and sometimes entire families. But within the walls of Unit 731, they weren't even called prisoners. In the cold, detached language of the official documents, they were referred to as maruta, which means logs, a chilling term that stripped them of their humanity, reducing them to mere raw material for experimentation. The work carried out inside Unit 731 was a twisted mockery of medical science. Its goal was to understand diseases, injuries, and the absolute limits of human endurance, all for the purpose of creating weapons. Researchers would deliberately infect prisoners with deadly pathogens like plague, cholera, and anthrax. They would then observe, with clinical detachment, how the diseases spread through the body, how quickly symptoms appeared, and which treatments, if any, were effective. In almost all cases, no anesthesia was used. The screams of the victims were a constant backdrop to the daily routine. The experiments were systematic and horrifically varied. Some prisoners were taken to outdoor testing fields to study the effects of new bombs. Others were subjected to extreme conditions to measure human survival limits. They were frozen to induce frostbite, placed in high-pressure chambers until their eyes bulged, and deprived of food and water to see how long a person could last. Every gruesome detail was recorded, not as a crime, but as scientific data. The horror wasn't confined to the facility's fences. Unit 731 conducted large-scale field operations. Aircraft would fly over Chinese villages and drop plague-infested fleas or contaminated materials. They poisoned wells and rivers, deliberately starting epidemics that swept through unsuspecting communities, killing thousands. These attacks demonstrated the terrifying potential of biological warfare and the catastrophic human cost of Ishii's ambition. Life for the prisoners inside the compound was a living nightmare. They lived under the constant threat of being chosen for the next experiment, enduring long periods of isolation, repeated examinations, and brutal procedures that left them terrified and broken. Eyewitness accounts describe a place where human compassion had vanished, replaced by cold, calculated cruelty. Over time, the frequent screams from the laboratories would fade into an eerie silence. As World War II began to turn against Japan, the end for Unit 731 was near. In August 1945, with Soviet forces closing in, Shiro Ishii gave his final order: destroy everything. All records were to be burned. The buildings were to be blown up, and every single remaining prisoner was to be eliminated to ensure there were no witnesses. The staff fled under the cover of night, their mission to erase every trace of what they had done. And here is where the story takes its most shocking turn. After the war, almost no one from Unit 731 was held accountable. When American intelligence learned about the vast amount of data collected from these human experiments, they saw a strategic opportunity. They approached Ishii and his top researchers with a deal. In exchange for all their research, thousands of pages detailing disease transmission, weaponization, and human responses, they would be granted immunity from war crimes prosecution. The United States, locked in the early days of the Cold War, decided the data was too valuable to pass up. The deal was struck. Dr. Shiro Ishii, the mastermind behind one of history's most monstrous research programs, reportedly lived out the rest of his life quietly, never facing a courtroom for his crimes. For decades, the Japanese government officially denied the existence and scale of Unit 731. Stories of survivors were dismissed, and the truth was buried under layers of secrecy and denial. It wasn't until the late 20th century that the silence began to break. Former staff members started to speak out. Classified documents were unearthed, and physical evidence, including mass graves and the ruins of the facility itself, could no longer be ignored. Today, the site of Unit 731 has been partially preserved as a museum and a memorial. Visitors can now walk through the ghostly remains of the buildings, learning about the dark intersection of science, war, and unchecked power. The site serves as a powerful reminder of how easily ethical boundaries can collapse when humanity is forgotten. The story of Unit 731 is one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century. A place where medical knowledge was twisted into a tool of mass destruction and where human lives were treated as nothing more than data points. The true horror isn't just what happened behind those walls. It's how long the world was kept in the dark, and how the pursuit of power allowed so many to escape justice. It's a history we must never forget, so that we may never allow it to be repeated.